We are currently at a stage where a week ago it was only 7 out of 9 provinces. We are now 9 out of 9 provinces. At the height of the outbreak in 2002, we had about 7,500 cases. Currently, only less than 10% of cases are reported because farmers are afraid of reporting foot and mouth disease because they know that farm will be quarantined off.
He says that he's concerned about registration and accreditation and what the consequences would be internationally. Explain to us what are his concerns, and then we can talk about whether they are valid or not.
Well, the problem here is that it has a name and it has a surname, and it's within the Department of Agriculture. That is where the problem lies. This is not a capacity issue. This is not an expert issue. We do have the best experts in our country on Minister Steenhuisen's task team. The fact is they don't listen to their recommendations. We've got the best private companies in the country with cold storage facilities, with all the necessary ways to get the vaccines to the farmers. They have the upfront cash to pay the money for the vaccines, but it's actively being blocked by the Department of Agriculture.
The John Steenhuisen we knew campaigning during the election was very critical of government, very critical of government overreach, was very outspoken about government incompetence. And now he took over a department, the staffers are still the same, but now he seems to believe that government is very competent.
The reason why we are here, those same people who got us into this mess are the ones sitting with him in those media conferences, and now they are the ones that are going to get us out of this. We cannot do that when we've got a 10-year plan. We need a 1 week, 1 month, 6-month plan. That's what we need now.
Francois, thank you for joining us on the podcast. It's good to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
So we're in some desperate times at the moment, and I want to talk to you about this foot and mouth disease and what's happening and what you guys are doing. But for a start, I would like to know from you, how are the farmers doing, the cattle farmers, and what's your take in your communication with them?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question because it differs a lot. You've got those farmers who currently are infected or their herds are infected, and they're in dire straits at the moment. They're quarantined. There's no way of them for getting any income because unlike a disaster where it's a drought or something like that where you can, partially sell off some of your livestock, in this case it's not the case. As soon as that quarantine is declared on your farm for 18 to 14 months, you cannot move any animals off that farm. So there's absolutely no income and all the expenses just keep on piling up. I actually had a conversation with a lady this morning who's a pig farmer near Warden. And they were actually actively shooting the pigs on the farm because there was no space for them. And pigs are not like cattle, which you can just let them stand in the field or in the feedlot. And although their piggery is already clean of foot and mouth disease and has been declared clean by a veterinarian, state veterinary service is just not getting back to them. So then you have the farmers who are waiting for disaster. They call you and they tell you my neighbor has it, and a couple of farms down the street, they have it as well. Then you have those farmers who are waiting for disaster. Those farmers whose neighbors are infected, and it's only a matter of time until the disease reaches them, and they want to take preemptive measures. They want to protect their assets, their animals, and ensure that they do not go through that disaster. And for them, the most urgent thing that they now need are vaccines to vaccinate preemptively. We are currently at a stage where a week ago it was only 7 out of 9 provinces. We are now 9 out of 9 provinces. At the height of the outbreak in 2002, we had about 7,500 cases. Currently, only less than 10% of cases are reported because farmers are afraid of reporting foot and mouth disease because they know that farm will be quarantined off. And in December of 2025, they said there's about 24,500 cases that are reported. And that figure, I think, is underreported by a lot. So it's unknown how big the spread of the disease is, and the exact impact we won't be able to know. I mean, we don't even know how many cattle there are in the country. It ranges between 12 and 18 million. So yes, it's a dire situation at the moment. We are already in the thick of it. There's no quick solution to where we are at the moment.
Mm. And you've been famously critical of the government's response to this. And you even described the government's response as, what was it, an NHI for agriculture.
Yes.
Why is this the case?
Well, the problem here is that it has a name and it has a surname, and it's within the Department of Agriculture. That is where the problem lies. This is not a capacity issue. This is not an expert issue. We do have the best experts in our country on Minister Steenhuisen's task team. The fact is they don't listen to their recommendations. We've got the best private companies in the country with cold storage facilities, with all the necessary ways to get the vaccines to the farmers. They have the upfront cash to pay the money for the vaccines, but it's actively being blocked by the Department of Agriculture. And that is a fact. We've known that, and we've seen all the evidence coming out over the past couple of weeks. And if we do not address that, we can have media conferences where we unveil 12,600 vaccines, which is 0.08% of what we need, and we can tell a nice story. But this disease is unforgiving. It doesn't ask for additional time, or it's not something that we can delay anymore to make plans. The plans needed to be rolled out 5 months ago already.
So if we could steelman the minister's position, because when you say he's blocking certain things, he's not blocking it because he wants foot and mouth disease to be a problem in the country. He has a particular strategy, and he says that he's concerned about registration and accreditation and what the consequences would be internationally. And there are some. Explain to us what are his concerns, and then we can talk about whether they are valid or not.
Yeah, and I wish this is what more journalists would ask him, because he always goes down the same road. He's got these sound bites, and in every media conference that he holds, he has the same route that he goes down. He says, thanks to me, we have decided to vaccinate the whole country, where we usually had to have a reactionary approach. And because of this, we have unveiled the 10-year plan, which is broken up in 3 phases, and we are going to include private sector, and then afterwards we are going to be declared foot and mouth disease free with vaccination, and we will be able to export our beef to certain countries in the world, and they will be able to enjoy this wonderful meat. And then he goes off on a tangent. Now, the problem with that is that, yes, he did say that we can vaccinate the entire national herd, and that was a decision that we all applauded. We said, yes, we cannot keep on going with this trajectory of increasing infections from 2019 onwards. But the reason for that was 20 years of decay of state veterinary services. That is accepted by all experts in the field, that the reason why we are here is because we don't have state veterinary services that are functioning correctly. Those same people who got us into this mess are the ones sitting with him in those media conferences, and now they are the ones that are going to get us out of this. So that's the first problem, is the team that he's got around him are the same guys that got us here. Then he talks about the 10-year plan. In order for us to stop this disease, we have to vaccinate en masse within, as soon as possible, 80% of the cattle population. And then within a month to 3 months, we have to do booster shots as well. We cannot do that when we've got a 10-year plan. We need a 1 week, 1 month, 6 month plan. That's what we need now. Those experts that he appointed, and let me just point this out. So they call it the triangle. The one side is the veterinary task team. The other side is the farmers and farming organization and producer organization. And then the third one is government. That veterinary task team was appointed 5 months ago. Only one recommendation was approved that they gave to the minister, and that was to send the samples of our disease strains to Pirbright so that they can do vaccine matching. And then he boasted and said, yes, but it's the first time in 14 years that we did this. That's not something to boast about. It's criminal. We should be doing that every single year. And if the World Organization of Animal Health found that out, they would not look kindly upon us because we were negligent in that. So that's the first issue here, is that we've got a task team. We've got now another task team who are also frustrated because the third leg of the triangle doesn't listen to them. They can give the best plans, but it's not executed. And if you ask them, so all of you on the different task teams have day jobs. So they have to do their day jobs and they have to solve the biggest crisis in biosecurity in more than 100 years in South Africa. It's just not possible. They do this after hours and sometimes in between the day. They have to write a national rollout plan, which I hear from one of the veterinarians, it's currently 2 pages. That thing has to be 1,000 pages because there's so many nitty-gritty issues that has to be solved in order to get these vaccines to farmers so that they can vaccinate their cattle.
Yeah.
Then he goes on to say, no, that if we do not use if we do not source or procure the vaccinations and do the distribution ourselves, it cannot be monitored and we will lose our status with WOA.
Yes.
We don't have a status with WOA. We are totally infected. And the problem now, as I said earlier, is farmers want to vaccinate now to protect their herds, to ensure that there are no further losses. Now he wants to look at a plan that is 12 to 15 years down the line of getting a WOA FMD with vaccination-free status. Why would you do that if we are currently losing animals at an alarming rate? And not only animals, but also farmers. Because if we are not farming profitably, we would stop with that commodity and we would move on to the next one. So, and he says private industry. He's only talking about he wants to maybe devolve it to private veterinarians because he's been actively undermining the private companies in South Africa who had written agreements with outside companies from Argentina who were able to provide us with 1 million vaccines by the end of this week and then 5 million after that. He was the one who went into a meeting with those representatives. He told them he's not willing to work with private sector and they should sign a deal with Onderstepoort Biological Products, which is a defunct state-owned entity. So these are the types of arguments that he makes, and then he blames us for disinformation. But the lies just keep on piling up against him. If you ask any one of those veterinarians, what should we do? They said, give this to the private industry and implement our plan, and we will have this disease in a manageable position in 6 months' time. At the moment, that is not the case.
So what's the risk of having the private sector take this? Is there some limits to what the private sector ought to do? What should be the ideal balance or role division between what the government is supposed to be doing and what the private sector is supposed to be doing?
That's another great question. So private sector makes our capacity limitless. But we've always said this has to be a public-private partnership. When we talk about monitoring, yes, government can fill the monitoring role. But private veterinarians and private companies all have that traceability function of where they got the disease, where they got the vaccine, and to who they distributed it. So that can be reported within the government veterinary structure. The problem is now that if we only allow state veterinarians and state companies to procure this vaccine, we won't get it out to the farmers in time, and we won't reach that 80% vaccination rate in order to make sure that the country, that immunity sticks to the national herd. The other argument that he also uses is he said that if we just make it a free-for-all and everybody can order vaccines willy-nilly, we will introduce new strains into the country like the O-type and A-type, which were reportedly seen from the vaccines that were brought in illegally from Kenya. But that's not what we were asking for. We all asked that. We know who are the reputable companies in the world who have proven vaccines that they first bring in with a SAPRA, Section 21 license, and then it is approved by the state veterinarian. All those necessary checks are done there that this is a proven vaccine. But the fact that those vaccines aren't available creates a black market like any other market. And if I did wanted to create a bioweapon, I would go to the first infected animal, take a vial of blood, and then synthesize it and take it to a country, because that's where it can be used as a bioweapon where they don't have the disease, like Australia, America, and Europe. So that is an absolute rubbish argument, because we said this needs to be a public-private partnership with accredited partners. But he uses these types of arguments to negate responsibility.
I want to take a moment to thank you for watching and following the content on this channel. And I also want to encourage you to like this video and to subscribe to this channel to ensure that our audience is broadened. What concerns me, maybe just sort of a bigger picture remark about the GNU and these opposition ministers who are in the GNU, and I have to say, I think this goes for John Steenhuisen more than any other of the opposition leaders who are in the GNU, is that he particularly seems to have made some form of a 180 in terms of his line and his beliefs about government. I know there was this GNU meeting end of last year where one of the other opposition parties said to the media, to a journalist afterwards, that looking at John Steenhuisen in the GNU is strange because the John Steenhuisen they see in the GNU is completely different from the John Steenhuisen of the DA that campaigns against BEE, that talks about limited government and so forth. And so one of the things that concerns me is it seems the John Steenhuisen we knew campaigning during the election was very critical of government, very critical of government overreach, was very outspoken about government incompetence. And now he took over a department. The staffers are still the same, but now he seems to believe that government is very competent, and government has to fix the problem. And the solution is just to trust the government to do more and to keep the private sector out. Is that something that you are concerned about, that what we see from him, particularly as the leader or current leader or leader who's not going to be leader for much longer of the DA, that there's this difference between what they said during elections and what we experience today?
Yeah, well, they made that claim as well, that we're not part of the DA anymore. We are now part of national government. So we are not obliged to carry out the policy positions, or we are not able to because it sits with some other department. That's the whole reason why he is accusing us of spreading misinformation and all of that, because as soon as we started asking critical questions about the agricultural master plan, about agri-BEE requirements, he became defensive and he stopped including us in these discussions. And we said, well, here are your previous press statements where you directed these same questions and demands on the then Minister of Agriculture. Why does this not apply to you now? And then he just doesn't answer. So I think also it's bad for us as farmers that because it was reported everywhere why it is that he left. There were these 4 issues, with the credit card, with the Uber Eats, Dion George, and with him losing his constituents over how he handles or is handling the foot and mouth disease issue. It was reported widely before he made his official announcement. And he also said prior to that, I'm going to stay on as DA leader, because he thought when he chose the role as Minister of Agriculture, he can still do both. And now
I think his argument was that he is going to be a very good minister and prove that the DA is a better government, and therefore the leader of the DA as a minister is the best minister in cabinet, and therefore it's good for the DA. But it turns out that it didn't quite work.
Well, let's just go to now. So now they let him go, or asked him not to stand for re-election as leader of the DA. But now we as the farmers are still stuck with him. So they have these standards of you're not allowed to do these things, and we would appreciate if you go. But the constituents he led down, he must now still lead through the biggest biosecurity disaster that we've ever seen. I don't think that's fair. I don't think farmers should carry the brunt of that. rather than have him stay leader of the DA, but get a minister that is actually competent. I mean, look what they're doing now in the Western Cape. Within one day of it being reported that there were there's a foot and mouth disease outbreak in the Western Cape, Ivan Meyer just absolutely rolled out an extremely brilliant plan, got budget, put up roadblocks. That's how you handle a disaster, not the way that it's currently being handled.
Yeah.
And that's also my biggest concern is. So now he said, I'm going to double down and I'm going to spend most of my time in accelerating the foot and mouth disease disaster because he's going down the wrong route. If you have the wrong path of a successful plan, you're going to make it worse now that you're spending all of your time on it. And that's what we're concerned about, that they don't have the right plan for this disaster.
So tell us about this court case, which there was a deadline for the department to respond to, and they didn't. What's the current status on the case? What are you asking for, and what do you expect would happen?
Yeah, so we sent that letter. We never received a formal reply. We received an acknowledgement of receipt, but I see yesterday night on an ingesprek interview, he said, no, we did provide them with written answers. Again, lies like it's nothing. We never received a written explanation. So we said that there is nothing within the current regulations stopping farmers from vaccinating preemptively. Look, that act that we're currently talking about, it was written in 1984, the Animal Diseases Act. In those times, there were single outbreaks in Limpopo. You know, it would mostly be Limpopo, northern parts of KwaZulu-Natal. And we would quarantine the area, vaccinate from the outside in, and that is how it was written for singular outbreaks that could be contained and controlled. It was never written for a national disaster. And that's also the thing that's bothering us is you make an announcement in November saying we're going to vaccinate the national herd, but you don't change the regulations or the act. And in numerous interviews, he said, I have changed the regulations. Go and ask anyone, what regulations have been changed? Nothing has been changed. So this is our problem, is that we're saying that farmers can vaccinate preemptively. We have the right to protect our own property and our own stock and ensure animal welfare is done correctly. And you as minister have no right in interfering with private industry. You have no right to go behind the back of vaccine importers and private companies who were totally transparent with a price, who had all the infrastructure, all the cold chain to get these vaccines to farmers and bungle those deals for them.
So where do you think this is going? What would the probable outcome be, and what would the preferable outcome be?
Well, the fact is, and just getting back to this whole WOA thing, because he still sticks to it.
Yeah, I hear him talk about that all the time.
Yeah,
yes.
like the gospel, where there was a journalist yesterday that spoke directly with WOA, and WOA said, look, we have no authority to tell a country who procures, who vaccinates, who distributes. That's not our job.
But then his entire argument falls flat, because everything is built on WOA. We need to do it this way, otherwise WOA will kick us out and all of this.
Yes, and that's what he was clinging to in every statement, is that's why he's not going to allow this. So our best case scenario is, and also just another thing, like the World Organization of Animal Health has certain projects in Eastern Africa where they work with the farmers, farmer technicians, and they upskill these people and teach them how to vaccinate cattle. If they can do it, why can we not do it? Why is it not possible for a farmer? Why is it not possible for a farmer's veterinarian to order the vaccine directly from the private company? Those private companies have their own courier services. They send it to the farmer, and the farmer and his private veterinarian will oversee the vaccination. But the farmhands and veterinary animal scientists can assist with the vaccination. That's done everywhere in the world. That's how Brazil and Argentina and all those countries solve their problems. So that is what we want to achieve. There is no middle ground. There is no concession on what he is now referring to or trying to centralize the value chain, because we're not going to be able to vaccinate all of those animals within the required amount of time if we go with a half-baked approach.
What would the right decision for him be? I mean, you've sort of alluded to this so far, but if you could write a speech for him to do a press conference today, what should he say?
he would have to step aside, and I do think that there are people within the department who are undermining him. That's also the reports that we're getting, and that all of the information is not getting through, because I don't believe it's just malice. Nobody is that evil. So that's why I do think that there are certain people who powers have been delegated to, but there needs to be an expert, and preferably a private sector person or organization with not too many cooks in the kitchen that directs and takes control of the situation. There are sections of the Act that gives the Minister and the Director of Animal Health devolution powers to private veterinarians, but we want to see that in the management as well. Or just take their recommendations and implement it. Pay those people out of the 2 billion that you have budgeted for vaccines. Pay them for 2-3 weeks to sit in a room and finish the rollout plan and just give it the go-ahead. But we are constantly seeing this, I don't know, this sluggish approach to approval of the import permits, approval of rollout plans, no communication to a place like the South African Police Force. When we had that incident in the Northern Cape, we phoned the police and we said, look, can you please help us? They responded within 3 hours. They had blockades and state veterinarians there. And they said, look, we really want to help, but we've received no communication from the Department of Agriculture, which was a shock to us all, because we thought there was this committee that is liaising with everybody and that everybody has a certain role. And I mean, one of them could most assuredly be communication with the South African Police Force, because that is how you stop the disease, is you stop the movement of unauthorized animals. And that's how it also spreads. So, yeah, it would just really be is let your task team do their work and get out of the way. I think with any government function, is get out of the way. You're there to monitor and to empower them, but not to implement the plan. The same with this vaccine production thing. The vets I speak to, especially in Europe, they want to know what is our obsession with vaccine production. There's nowhere else in the world except here and a couple of other countries in South Africa where they still produce their own vaccines, because private companies can just do it better.
If there are people who want to help, what can they do? Should they reach out to you? What advice do you have for people, and how can people help you in what you are doing?
Yeah, so this is going to affect everybody down the line. I think we've already seen beef prices go up. I just want to sketch this context within the South African subsector and what everything is worth. So if we first look at the biggest industry is poultry. They are worth about 72 billion, the market. Then we have maize, which is 64 billion. Then we have cattle, 46 billion. Then we have the dairy industry, 22 billion. And then we have the citrus industry with 16 billion. The damage over the next 5 years projected at the current rate is 13.1 billion rand for the industry. In 10 years, it goes up to 25 billion.
Sure.
What that means is we are going to be starting to lose farmers at a very quick rate, because either they just don't have the means to go on, or they just stopping with the whole farming with cattle. And I mean, in the dairy industry, they've already been decimated, because dairy cattle are much harder hit by foot and mouth. They die from it, and it's not mostly because of the disease itself. It's because the hoof comes loose from the ankle itself, and those animals can't get up, so they usually shoot them then, and production goes down and all of that. But if that happens, we're not going to have enough cattle farmers in the country to provide dairy products, to provide meat. It's going to affect the wool industry at some stage, and there are others on the periphery which could see bigger losses. But this is going to affect us as consumers as well. We are going to pay more for these products. So we asked that the farmers, all of them, most of them, have representatives on these task teams. Your job is not to be the minister's friend. Your job is not there to sacrifice the interests of your members to have an open line of communication with him. You are there to represent their interests, and you need to make your voice heard. And that is what I would urge all farmers and members of the public to do, is demand answers from them. And then, from our side, we are going to continue with our court matter. We've got a very good application that is currently being drafted, and if anybody wants to contribute to those costs, they can just go to our website, which is www.saai.org. But if they want to reach out, we do have a dedicated WhatsApp line. It's 066-071-6094, and we usually try to help there as much as we can with questions that farmers have who are uncertain of the current situation.
Well, Francois, thank you. Thank you for joining us, and we'll definitely follow this. I know this story, it's a very big deal, and it really affects everyone, not just the farmers. And we hope that there will be an outcome that is preferable as quickly as possible, but it doesn't seem that we should hold our breath for something to happen in the next week or two. But good luck with your work, and we'll definitely follow it.
Thank you so much.
If you would like to support this channel and the work that we are doing at Lex Libertas to work toward a more sustainable and a more viable political dispensation for South Africa, I would like to encourage you to sign up as a contributor by clicking on the link in the description.